Hello, my name is Jacob. I run a small farm in South Carolina and I raise pigs. And if you're watching this video, it's probably because you are looking for information on how you should price your pigs. And we are going to find the answer to that question today. We are going to go through the process of determining what your price needs to be. We're going to talk about some of my numbers. We're going to talk about some generalities here. I'm going to give you as realistic a look as I can into what raising pigs looks like for me. That being said, please ignore the specificities of these numbers because they do not necessarily apply to you. We are going through the process of determining how you can get to the answer that you need to find in regards to what should you charge for your pigs. So we're going to do some math, but it's nothing hard. If you can do basic arithmetic, add, subtract, multiply, divide, you're good to go. You don't even have to be able to do that because your phone has a calculator and you're probably watching this on your phone right now. So how do we find the answer of what do we need to charge for our pigs? Well, we have to do some accounting. We have to factor in the costs that we have in production, and then we have to determine how we are going to sell those pigs. So we're going to run through sort of some rough numbers real quick about what it looks like in terms of expenses to get a pig to market weight. So we have our overhead. So for me, I use portable electric nets to contain my pigs, and they're about $100 each. It requires 8 of those nets per group of pigs that I have, and I figure that they're going to last about 5 years. So it'll cost me about $160 a year in nets to raise pigs. And since you can grow out 2 batches of pigs in a year, they take roughly 6 months to go from feeder to finish. Our fence cost per group of pigs is about $80 in terms of the actual fencing for my operation. If you have a fixed fence on your farm or you're using another method of containment, you need to factor in what that cost is. And hopefully, if you do have a fixed fence system, you're still moving them somehow or doing something to keep them in a relatively sanitary environment. Now, for this electric fence, I also have a fence charger, which costs about $300, and I'm figuring it's going to last about 5 years before it gives up the ghost. Seems to be a pretty good number for those in my experience. So that broken down over 5 years um, comes to, yeah, $60 a year, which really should be $30 per group. So we've got $30 in the cost of the charger, and I use deep cycle marine batteries to power the fence. The battery lasts about 2 years, costs about $100, which is $25 per group of pigs. I also have a four-wheel drive vehicle that I use for choring things on the farm. I'm in that vehicle about $1,500, and I figure I probably have about 5 years left before it throws a rod, explodes, catches on fires, rolls off a cliff, and winds up in a scrapyard. So that means that my cost for having that vehicle is roughly $150 a year, or per batch, not per year, per group. $300 per year, $150 per group. We have to have fuel to go in that and to go in the truck to go get feed, to take into the processor, so on and so forth. I'm just throwing in $200 in fuel to give some accounting for that here. I also have a trailer for picking up feeder pigs and for hauling them to the butcher. I'm in that trailer for about $1,500-ish, I believe, and that broken down over the 10 years that I expect it to last me into the future, and over 2 groups a year, runs me about $60 per group of pigs. Then we also have storage. I didn't factor in the cost of chest freezers in this because they are so relatively inexpensive and plentiful on marketplace in my area. But I did factor in electricity. My power bill for storing my product, which I have more than just pork, so I have to consider that, is about $50 a month, and I'm figuring I'm going to hold on to that product for about 3 months. So I gave half of the cost of that power bill to the pigs. So my storage expense is going to be about $75 for these pigs. Now, depending upon how and where you're selling pigs, you may also have expenses like farmers market fees. And for me, for a few months to go to the farmer's market, about 3 months really, it's going to cost me around $400 in fees to go to markets to actually sell these retail cuts. I also give $100 in advertising. This is for business cards, print material, Facebook ads, Google ads, what have you, it's good to factor in at least some sort of budget for advertising. Sure, you can get a long way with just posting posts on Facebook, using your network, talking to family, friends, church members, etc. Um, but I want to factor in a little bit of something for advertising here. Then we have labor. So in my area, it's very difficult to get anyone who's competent and who will actually show up to come to work for much less than 25 bucks an hour. So $25 an hour, figuring an average of 4 hours a week in choring the pigs, which is very low. It may be higher for some people, maybe lower for others. Again, all of this depends on your operation. We are just doing the exercise of getting the number. Over the course of 6 months comes to $2,400 in labor total to raise this group of 10 pigs. I don't know if I mentioned that. We're figuring on a group of 10 pigs in this equation. Now, the feeders that I am fixing to take to butcher, their market weight now, those feeders cost me $100 each. I have seen feeders for as little as $50, and I have seen them for as much as $200, if you can believe it. So you've got to account for the actual cost of acquiring the pigs, $100 each in this case. And feed, for me, my feed costs about $600 per ton, and a pig is going to consume about a half ton of feed to get to our target market weight of around 250 pounds. I shoot for 250 to 300, and with a feed conversion of 3.5 pounds of feed per pound of gain, I like to round up and say 4 to be a little conservative. There's spillage, there's waste, etc. Half ton of feed gets you to 250-pound live weight animal. So our total feed expense for these pigs is going to be in the ballpark of $3,000 to raise out these 10 pigs. Now, I've also got to account for butcher fees. Depending upon the size of the animal, how I have it cut, so on and so forth, this number can vary somewhat wildly. Generally, for me, it falls in around the $250 to $300 range. I've had some that I've had butchered for as little as $200, depending upon how I had them cut and packaged, and based on their size. And I've had some that were a little bit over $400. Again, depending upon what they were, what size they were, how I had them packaged. So about $250 per pig in butcher fees. Now, we've got sort of our overhead fixed expenses, our costs, our direct input costs of production here. And now we're getting down to talking about how we're going to sell them, and in turn, how we're going to sort of work out this math equation, if you will. So the first way that you can sell your pigs is to sell them live. We have some customers who want to come pick up their pig live or knock it on farm, take it home and butcher it themselves, or do a, Hawaiian, chuck it in the ground with a charcoal and roast that puppy. Whatever you want to do. We do have some customers that shop that way with us, and so we are selling them a live 250-pound hog in that case. Our pricing is going to vary radically in terms of the price per pound if we're selling it live weight versus if we're selling it hanging or packaged. So in the case of selling it live weight, you still have to account for all these expenses, perhaps sans butcher, sans storage, sans market fees. But the rest of this pretty much stays the same. Maybe if you're having feeders delivered or you have a cage you can put them in the back of your truck, maybe you don't need a trailer. If you're only doing a few, maybe you don't need a four-wheel drive vehicle, just a good pair of boots will get it done for you. That's great, but you still have to do this math even if you're selling your pigs live. Granted, that number in terms of price per pound live weight is going to be a heck of a lot lower than it is for our package weight, necessarily, right? We're talking about less than half of the product in this case. But that's something to consider. If you're selling at hanging weight, again, the price is certainly going to be more than live weight. We've already lost a considerable amount of product in that case. And generally speaking, your hanging weight is going to be roughly 70 to 72, 73% of your live weight. I like to figure very conservatively with my numbers, so I figure low. So I'm saying that I'm only going to get 70% of the animal hanging on the scale at the butcher. So if you have to make up for that 30% of that carcass that you lost when you went to hanging weight if you did your math based on live weight. And if you don't have a scale and you're selling pigs live, or if you're just trying to get an idea of how big are my pigs, I don't have a scale, I don't have a way to measure that at home, a cheat sheet, and it's very crude, it's not very precise, but it will get you in the ballpark, is to take the girth of the pig around the abdomen, square that number, so multiply it by itself, and then multiply that by the length of the pig measured from the base of the ear to the base of the tail. You take that measurement, multiply it by the girth squared, divide by 400, and that will give you very crudely a ballpark number of what that animal is going to weigh live. Now, if we take it all the way to packaged, which is what I do in my operation, obviously we've lost even more potential product to sell. So generally going from hanging weight to packaged, you're going to be at about 60 to 65% of your hang weight if you go with boneless cuts. If you go with bone-in cuts, it's going to be closer to 73, 74%. But in my experience, it's much harder to sell bone-in cuts and you can't charge nearly as much for them. So while you do have a little bit more of them, it really doesn't pencil out well, in my opinion, due to how difficult that product can be to sell to go with bone in. So I go with boneless pretty much exclusively on all of my cuts. If it's possible to go boneless, I'm going boneless. That's just what the customers in my area expect. So we've got it down to 114 pounds of packaged product here. So with these 10 pigs, accounting for our overhead, our labor, accounting for the cost of the pigs, the feed, the butchering, to get the finished product in the freezer, ready to sell to the customer. In my case, we're looking at right around $10,000 invested in these animals. So $1,000 a pig. That's what it costs for us to get meat in the freezer, in this case, $1,000 a head, to then be able to sell it. So in my case, this 114 pounds ish of packaged weight, I'm going to sell that. My absolute cheapest cut that you can buy from me in terms of actual meat from a pig is $9 a pound. To some people, that's going to be insane. To other people, it's like, wow, for forest raised, non pharmaceuticalized pork, pretty good. For other people, like I said, they're going to lose their absolute mind when I say that. So $9 a pound is the lowest price of any of my products in terms of actual meat. Offal, liver, hearts, etc. I sell that stuff, but I do not factor that into this equation because it's difficult to sell. So $9 a pound multiplied by that 114 pounds leaves us with $1,024 of value in that animal based on the lowest price per pound. Now, you might look at this and say, hey, that doesn't math very well. You're only making 24 bucks a pig. That's stupid. And it would be stupid, but that's not the case. So this animal, depending upon how big it is, depending upon how I have it cut, depending upon how I have it packaged and how I'm selling it, there's a lot of variables there, I know. I'm going to get between 13 and 15, maybe even $1,600 for that animal. But we'll be conservative here. We'll say that the actual retail value of that animal is $1,300. So all right, we're making 300 bucks a head now. Not terrible, okay? In my operation, I want to make at least a 30% margin on anything I produce where it's not worth my time. So this has fallen pretty close to that ballpark here. For me, it's such a low energy investment though into producing this product that I'm willing to do that. For other products that I produce that require much more of my time, I expect a better rate of return due to how much effort is involved with it. But so great, we're making $300 a pig. So our gross on these pigs is going to be $13,000. All right. And if we subtract our investment from our gross. That leaves us with a $3,000 profit margin. Not bad. We made 30% on our initial investment here. But because we don't have hired help right now, I'm going to add that number back into it. I'm going to add our labor back into it. So my actual take home on this theoretical group of pigs would be $5,400 that I'm actually profiting, roughly a 50% margin. I want to target at least a 50% margin on my investment for my business so that I can keep growing, reinvest, and pay the bills, because this is in fact what I do full time. So there you go. That's kind of how that washes out in this case. This is a fairly realistic look at how my farm operates. And I think that it's valuable to share relatively real numbers with each other. Now, that being said, I see a lot of people selling pigs for like $3 a pound live weight, 354 bucks a pound live weight. If you're selling this 250-pound pig for $3 a pound live weight, you're only getting $750 back for that pig, but your cost was $1,000 a head. You just lost $250 on that animal. That's insanity. That's crazy. That is not sustainable. I see a lot of people selling pigs hanging for like $4 a pound. That would be what, $700? Again, you just lost $300, assuming the customer, assuming that you're paying the butcher fee. If you're not paying the butcher fee, all right, you're definitely getting closer to making something there, but that's tough. That's tough. That's tough to hack. And if you're selling your finished product for like $5, $6, $7 a pound finished, you're losing your shirt and you're working your butt off to do it. It's insanity. Now, some people are going to get mad. Some people aren't going to understand how to do this math. That is inevitable, I suppose. And they're going to be screaming at me in the comments section going, oh, I sell my pigs for $6 a pound retail packaging, or I sell my pigs live for $2.50 a pound, and I'm making money. And if you are, that's great. That's fantastic. If you're able to provide a quality product at that price point, I think that's amazing. For me, with my inputs running my business, that is not possible. And I think that there are many people out there who are lying to themselves, telling themselves that they are making a profit, when in fact, at best, they are chasing their tail and they're not making a red cent. So I see a lot of people also talking about, well, I'm going to raise 4 pigs, 2 for my family, and then 2 to sell. And the 2 pigs that I sell will cover the costs of raising my pigs. And that is doable. That is possible. Okay. So in that situation, you're just raising a few in the backyard, right? You probably don't need a 4x4 to get that done. You, you know, I mean, you may not even need a trailer to get that done, right? If you're just picking up feeder pigs and you're, depending upon the arrangement that you have with your buyers, you may not need a trailer. Storage, as far as from a business perspective, sure, you're gonna have to store your own product, but that's more of a household expense than a business expense, I would argue. So storage would go out the window on that. Market fees, well, that would go right out the window if you're not going to farmers markets. If you're selling them to family and friends, don't have any costs in advertising. If you don't value your time at anything, which, by the way, you're crazy if you don't value your time at anything. What the heck is 2025? Things are expensive. But, whatever. Just for this homestead sort of example we're talking about now, you don't value that. You still got to have some fencing. That's going to cost you something. You still got to go pick up fuel, your feed. You're going to have fuel expense in that. May or may not have a trailer, but let's just say you do. It's kind of heck if you don't. Okay, well, I mean, we just saved a significant amount of money here. I mean, what do we save? Um, just a little over $3,000 right there. Not bad. Okay, it starts to make more sense. And the reality is, for me and my business, these numbers right here on this side of the board, are really going to stay pretty much the same whether I'm raising 4 pigs or whether I'm raising 40 at a time. These numbers don't change a lot. There'll be some more in fuel, there'll be some more in storage. I might have to tack on a little bit more for farmers markets and maybe just a little bit more for labor. But the day to day taking care of pigs is not going to change radically for me whether I'm raising 10 or 20. And all these costs more or less stay the same, whether it's 10 or 20. And in fact, my fuel cost, although it will go up as a whole, will actually go down if I'm raising more animals in one group because I am dispensing all of this expense over more animals, including fuel and such, so that my profit per animal is going to go up. That is why people that are farming for profit generally run fairly considerable size groups of animals because the economy of scale really comes into play. For instance, when I'm buying feed, I'm not buying feed in 50-pound bags nearly as much as I used to. I'm buying them in 1-ton super sacks. And hopefully later this year, I will not be going to pick up feed. I'll be having it delivered by the 3-ton truckload into bins. So that's another way that you can save money. I don't have to pay the fuel to go to the feed store to get the feed. I don't have to wear and tear my vehicle to get that done. It's being done for me. Um, yeah, know your numbers. Know your numbers, guys. It's important. You will lose your shirt if you do not do the numbers. And it's really not that hard. And as a closing thought, you're doing a tremendous disservice to yourself and to the image of agriculture by not doing your numbers and being professional in this. Now, I'm not saying that if you're just raising a few pigs in the backyard, every time you get pigs, you have to break out the spreadsheet and you have to work through this stuff, although it wouldn't be a bad idea to take the, 15, 20, 30 minutes it takes to do this if you just sit down and are dedicated. Um, but if you're doing this, especially as a business of any scale, you need to track these expenses and you need to know what your costs are before you sell your product. You need to know what you have in that product because it is so easy to lose money. Most margins in agriculture are very slim. In fact, the 30% sort of minimum that I target would be unheard of for commercial agriculture. I mean, those guys aren't making that. But you need to know this so that you can do a good service to yourself and so that you can have a fair service to your community. Because most people, from what I'm seeing, are selling their products far too cheap. They're selling them under value, even just to themselves. They're not even recouping their costs, or they're not paying themselves for producing the product. And that's unacceptable. I mean, who would go to work and do all that hard work for free? I'm not going to do a 9 to 5 job for free. I don't do it for my health. I'll tell you that. I don't do this for my health. I'll tell you that. I do it to make a living and to provide a quality product to my customers. In not doing the numbers and not knowing your numbers, you are actually hurting other people by undercutting them whilst undercutting yourself. And that's a little bit selfish in my telling you that, but I also tell you that because I want you to be successful. I want to see more small farms winning in local agriculture. And a big part of that is simply knowing the numbers. You have to just sit down and do the math. And it's probably my least favorite part of the job, right? Is sitting down at a computer or with a notebook and going through and writing down all my expenses and coming up with the numbers. But it's extremely, extremely important and very much overlooked. So I would encourage you to just take a little bit of time, sit down and do this. It's not that hard. It is a little bit tedious, but you can certainly do it. Take all of your overhead, all of your fixed costs of anything that in any way touches the production of that particular product. Take your direct inputs, such as your feed, the cost of the animal, the butchering. If you have a water bill, factor that in. You have your total investment. You figure out what your gross value for that product is, for that animal. take your investment, subtract your investment from your gross, gives you your net. And in this case, we added in our labor because I'm paying that to myself currently. So if you have hired help, this is your profit. In my case, this is what I'm taking home. And there you go. There you have it. That's what I've got for you. It's a short, sweet little presentation on how to price your products. I hope it was helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments on the YouTube video, and I will do the best I can to answer them. And other than that, have a great day. Peace.